Okay, we are doing, this is 1.5, rational expressions, and it is pages 37 and 38. 11 is another problem where we are going to do fractions and decimals, but it has both in the equation, so we can't do that. However, I can change all of them into into decimals, and that's what I would prefer to do. So 50 and 1/2 would be 50.2 plus negative 12.3. So I'm going to do that first with all of the problems. And yes, I know we're short on space, so I know that you're going to end up copying it all over the paper, just like I'm going to end up copying it all over the paper. I will try to keep my colors to match. B, I'm going to change that 1/2 to 0.5, and that's negative 50.5 plus negative 12.3. I will make this next one pink, and I'm changing that 50.5 to 50.5 plus 12.3, positive 12.3. It looks like I forgot to do a, there. So I'm going to go back to my first problem, and I will do 50.2 plus 12.3. And that is a situation, again, where they are different signs. So since they are different signs, I need to find the difference, which means subtract. So I'm going to go off to the side and make sure that I line up my decimals and subtract that bigger number from that smaller number. I have to borrow 4 places over. 12 minus 3 is 9. 9 minus 2 is 7. 4 minus 1 is 3. So the answer to that one is 37.9. Now I'm going to change my color, and I'm going to go to a different problem. Letter B. I might have to write tiny so that I can fit it in the space. So 50.5, negative 50.5, and a negative 12.3 means I'm just adding them and keeping the sign. With that being stated, what did I forget to do in the previous question? I forgot to think about whether or not this is positive or negative. So because 50 is further, this is really positive. Sorry about that. But this time, since they're both the same sign, they're going to keep the same sign. 5 plus 3 is 8. 0 plus 2 is 2. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6. And the answer is negative 62.8. And I will circle that one. Now the thing I'm going to notice is something that we talked about yesterday. Look what happened. These became each other's opposites. So since those became each other's opposites, what's going to happen is the answer will then be opposite. But let's prove that. So right now I have 50.5 plus 12.3. They are different signs, so I have to subtract them just like I did on the earlier problem. So again, borrow. This becomes a 9. That becomes a 4. That's a 9, 7, 37.9. Now that last question that I didn't ask last time, is it positive or negative? I have to ask this time. It's going to be negative this time because the answer is further from 0. The 50 is further from 0, so 37.9 negative is the answer to that problem. Okay, let's try number 14. I'm going to go back to a different color. It does give you a picture, which is helpful, so I don't have to demo over the picture. But it says a bird flies from its nest to the bottom of the canyon. How far did the bird fly? So that picture helps me because I'm adding their absolute values, which is their distance. Okay, so I'm adding the 529 feet to the 89 3/5 feet. Now, I do like that this helped me in the sense of, hold on, let me do this. 528 plus 8 3/5, 1/5. So I do like that this helped me because they kept the same denominator. So that means I could just add the denominators and come up with 4/5. And then I just add my numbers the regular way. Because we are determining distance, I added both as positive numbers and got 536 4/5 feet. Now, I hope that makes sense, but for me, I don't worry about subtracting a negative when I can realize that I'm looking at distance, so I can add their absolute values. Okay, we're looking at number 15. A scuba diving instructor takes a group of students to a depth, so that means it's negative, of 554 and 96 hundredths feet. There they ascend 2238 feet to see some fish. Where are the fish in relation to the surface? So I'm going to draw my picture. So they went down originally 54.96. Okay, and this is 0 because it's the top of the sea. The fish are somewhere, they had to ascend 22.38 to see the fish. Now, what you can tell is from that picture, I'm not adding two numbers. I'm not finding distance. What I'm looking for is this. Where let's get a color. Is this distance versus the problem before where I had to find the entire distance. So I want you guys to focus on being able to tell the difference. In this one, you're just trying to find out this distance here. You're not trying to find out the entire distance. That's the difference. This one requiring a minus, or just knowing to add their absolute values. Okay, that looks awful. This one, you'll actually have to put the two numbers together. So this particular problem will be negative 54.96 plus 22 and 38 hundredths. Now, lucky for us, that's exactly what was in the problem. They are different signs, so I still have to subtract them. 54.96 hundredths minus 22.38. I got to do that borrowing thing. 16 minus 8 is 8. 8 minus 3 is 5. 4 minus 2 is 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. So 32.58. The last question we have to ask is this positive or negative? Well, because this number is further from 0, that is the one that wins. And I'm going to make sure that I label it feet. Okay, we're going to do number 17. I will change my color again. The roots of a plant reach down, so that's this distance. So that's down. That's a minus. 3 3/4 inches below the ground. How many inches is the plant above the ground? Okay. So this time it has a picture. And that's helpful because I'm not sure I would have drawn it how they did. So this 12 1/2 is that entire length. So since that's that entire length, then I only need to know this little portion right here. I need to subtract. So that 12 1/2, I like decimals. I know that 1/2 is 0.5, okay? And subtract 3 3/4. Well, 3 3/4, 3/4 is 3/4. And I think of that as money. If I have 3/4, I have 75 cents. I did line up my decimals, so make sure that you did that. You lined up those decimals. And since I lined up the decimals, I need to add a 0 over here. So that 0 means I have to borrow. So 10 minus 5 is 5. 4 minus 7 is still not enough, so I've got to go borrow from the next door neighbor. I get 14 minus 7 is 7. Bring down that decimal point. 11 minus 3 is 8. So the answer to that is 8.75 inches above the ground. Okay. The temperature at sunrise and sunset are showed in the table. So that's this over here. Okay, we've got to look at the table. Write an expression that represents the change in temperature for day 1. So they want to know the change in temperature for day 1. So if I draw my thermometer, it starts at a negative 1131. My 0 is here, and my 13.49 is here. So that's a distance. Okay, and since the temperature went up, that's a distance. That means I can just add the two positive numbers. Yep. Yep. I mean, there's a couple of things I don't like about this problem, but I'm not going to say anything. So I'm going to take, because I'm doing distance, I'm taking the absolute value of negative 11.31 because it's just distance. An absolute value tells me distance. And it's going to add the absolute value of the 13.49. I know that's kind of a new putting it onto paper thing, but it's not new for you guys to understand that absolute value is distance. So since I have absolute value, I can immediately change this 11.31, negative 11.31 to positive 11.31 plus 13.49. That makes it so much easier to add. So I'm going to cheat and try to save a little space. Move this on top of each other. So 0, that carries the 1. That would be 8. Decimal point stays the same. So 2480. So that's the change that we had for day 1. Now the interesting part is on day 2, they're going to do the same thing. They want us to find out the difference for that. And if I drew my picture, it would work in the same way. The 0 would be there. It starts out at negative 7 and 69 tenths, and it would go to positive 25.25. So I'm still working in finding the total distance. So I'm going to use their absolute values again. The absolute value of negative 7.69 plus the absolute value of 25.25. So remember, these little lines mean absolute value, which is telling you we're just dealing with distance. So distance from negative 7 and 69/100 is just 7.69. It changes it to positive. Plus 25.25. I'm going to line them up so that I can add them. Remembering to line up the decimals as I add. 4, carry the 1, 9, 12, carry the 1, 32. So day 2 has a 32.94 change. Did I answer the question? Day 2, I'm going to finish this sentence over here. Day 2, 39.94 change was bigger than day 1. Now there's a couple of these little problems like number 20 that show up, and we just need to figure it out. So this one is 5 meters positive because it says above water. Her dive takes her 2.1 meters below, so that's a negative okay? Which expression could represent the distance? So that's why we started throwing in this absolute value to make sure that they match. So I'm going to rewrite this one because I'm no longer allowed to subtract. 5 minus would be plus 2.1. And I'll have to rewrite it again to make my head work. 5 plus 2.1. So does that match what we have up here? No. So that's not an answer. Okay? Let's rewrite this one over here. Negative 2.1. Well, I have two subtractions, so that's going to turn into a positive 5. Does that match what we have up here? A positive 5, yes, and a negative 2.1, yes. So that one will be an answer. This one right here has a negative 2.1, has a positive 2.1, which is not what we have. And this one has a negative 5, so no. This one has a negative 2.1, so I'm going to match, yes. But it also has a, well, if I rewrite it the right way, negative 2.1, and actually it'll be a positive 1. There's the trick question. So let's think about this one again. So let's rewrite it. The absolute value of negative 2.1 plus negative 5. Well, negative 2.1 plus negative 5, they're the same sign. So they will be 7.1 negative absolute value. And the answer to this one is 7.1. So this one would be because, and only because, it takes the absolute value. So that one will be 2. This one has a positive 5 plus a negative 2.1. Let's work that one out. If I work that one out, I get the difference, which is 2.9, and that one will not be. I want to go up and look at this one again. With a different mindset. Let's change it to 5 plus 2.1. And the absolute value, that will equal the absolute value of 7.1. And that is the correct distance. So I'm going to apologize. I didn't draw my picture, and that made me mess up, didn't it? Sure did. So let's draw that picture. Okay, so she's up here. And she's got 5 meters here. And this is the water, but she also has 2.1 meters here. So they want to find out the entire distance. This just shows you that drawing a picture is needed. So as I look at this to find the to find the distance will be that 5 plus the 2.1, which is 7.1. So paying attention to these signs that I gave you is important, but also solving the problem is important because this one matched, but this one did not, because it changes to where you have to subtract them. So for all of these problems, you will have to do the math, not just look at it. But I will tell you, this is an answer, this is an answer, and we're good. And that's all the problems, thank goodness.